on veterans. So that's good news for veterans. So that's the summary of the housing bill. We want to bring it to you first here on KZYX. And once again, any questions out there in our listening audience, please email us at dj@kzyx.org. I'd like to move on to our guest right now. Our guest is Catherine Austin Fitz. She is the president and founder of Solari Investment Advisory. She's got a solid gold resume, and I say that a little bit with tongue-in-cheek because she's a big proponent of gold through an organization called GATA, or Gold Antitrust Committee. Catherine is the former managing director and member of the board of directors of Dillon Read, which was one of the old school white shoe, very venerable Wall Street firms, which was later sold to Travelers, and then I think sold again to UBS, where UBS blew it up. They're now out of business, sadly. Catherine is also the assistant secretary of HUD, and I'm sure she'll talk about some of the funny accounting systems at HUD. She has been on the board of directors at Sallie Mae, the Student Loan Authority. She's been a member of the advisory council at Fannie Mae, so she knows a lot about this home mortgage meltdown. And she's been a member of the Emerging Markets Committee of the Securities Exchange Commission. Catherine, we're delighted to have you on the show. Thank you.
John, thank you so much. It's great to be on.
You know, I just got a rush. I almost feel...
I do want to point out that, yes, I was on a board at Fannie Mae with Angelo, but I didn't get a mortgage.
You know, what I neglected to mention in my intro is that you've advised portfolios some $300 billion worth of assets and liabilities, and you also did something like $25 or $30 billion worth of deals. As the father of 5 daughters, one of whom I hope will end up in business with me in Malta, I want to say you're a real role model for young women in this business.
Well, the interesting thing about Wall Street when I was there was incredible opportunity. As you know, it's a very performance-oriented environment, and so a woman could go in, and if you worked hard and did well, there was a lot of room to do stuff, so I enjoyed it.
Have things changed? Are things better for young women on Wall Street?
You know, John, I've been so out of touch with Wall Street for so long. You know, I went to Washington in 1989 to be a regulator and found myself, on the opposite side of Wall Street. And then my company was lead financial advisor for FHA in the 90s, and I just found myself fisticuffing with Wall Street and beating up Wall Street to get them to behave on behalf of the agency I represented. And and of course, since then, I've been doing a lot with independent media, so I've been extremely critical of Wall Street. So now, I have to tell you, one of the reasons I went to Wall Street, to Washington was, the honest people were really getting pushed out of Wall Street, as they were within every industry. You know, I think it was across the board as sort of the dirty money bought everybody up. And in fact, I wrote a history of that time, which you can find on my website at Solari.com, called Dillon Read and the Aristocracy of Stock Profits, which is about my old firm. So I think it's changed a lot. And I think part of it has been the increasing assertion of the Federal Reserve and the use of federal credit to really run and control and manage the market. So, and as that's happened, everything has changed dramatically.
Let's jump in right there. What gave the Federal Reserve the authority to do what it does, or is it just made up?
Well, in a certain sense, it's made up because. But what you're watching is the legislation with this Fannie and Freddie bailout and the Paulson plan proposals, the legislation trying to catch up with what they're doing. The New York Fed is the lead bank in the Federal Reserve System and is the depository for the U.S. government. And during the 1990s and early 2000s, we watched $4 trillion of undocumentable adjustments occur in the federal government, and a refusal by the government to this day to produce audited consolidated financial statements is required by law. So you're watching something that's being run systemically as a criminal operation. I mean, it's way outside the Constitution for many, many years. None of that can happen unless your depository, your banking depositories, are implementing these things, including, as you know, the manipulations in the financial markets and the precious metals market, which GATA has tried to illuminate and stop. And so these kinds of transactions, whether it's your payment and audit account or the manipulation in the market, is being implemented by the Fed way outside the Constitution, and that's been going on for quite some time. And now what we're watching is the legislation catch up and try and make that all constitutional and permissible. And the frightening thing about it, John, is that you have a small group of people who can arbitrarily determine the cost of capital for any player in the society, and they're doing it in a way where basically, certain people have capital for essentially free, or they can arbitrage it and make money. So I pay you to take my capital, whereas other people, particularly on Main Street, are paying extraordinary amounts, way more than their performance warrants economically. So we're watching a financial coup d'etat.
How is this possible? Is it just due to is it just attributable to the power of lobbyists? I mean, what's going on?
Well, this has been organic. This has been happening emergently, but oversimplified, I would say there's, I divide the world into two groups. One is the pro-centralization team, and the other is the pro-decentralization team. And part of the challenge, Sean, is the pro-decentralization team for a long time can't fathom that the pro-centralization team exists and is engaged in economic warfare. And most people are busy, and most people are pretty healthy, and they can't fathom that you literally have people who are psychotic in approach getting together, organizing, and using these digital technology or sort of invisible systems, finance money, to do things that are harmful. And I think over time, the profits from this kind of organization have been very, very abundant and enough to pay for the kind of enforcement and lobbying and different, different things that we've seen go on behind the scenes. So a whole covert operation to keep the pro-centralization team going. And really the thing that has been the most destructive is turning over the right to get taxpayers on the hook, and in exchange for a variety of private interests being free to use that. So the combination of the federal credit with centralized private interests has been frightening, and that's why this Fannie Freddie bailout is so extraordinary. I once had a HUD developer who was head of the AFL-CIO Trust sit across from me at the Jockey Club and say, as long as I can get government subsidies and federal credit, what do I care if people have education and jobs? And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a whole economy where the wealthy can make money indifferent to